Hey, let's talk about games. Hello my friends, you're listening to Hydra, and today I'd love to talk to you about my thoughts on the season system. Now obviously we're only within the levelling portion of the season system, but already I feel like it's time to talk about some of the major limitations that this season is presenting us with, and air some concerns. You can consider this to be feedback, a bit of a rant, a bit of a waffle, whatever you like. I'd love to know what you think of the current situation down below in the comments, but first let's outline what's going on. So currently we are levelling towards a war zone. Obviously we got an event starting today, looking forward to that. It's going to be very nice, hopefully a big turning point for the game, fingers crossed, who knows. But at the moment we're primarily leveling and gearing, ready for this war zone which will start at some point in the near future. And then we will have the war zone, which is akin to endgame content, and then that will open the next subsector, and presumably then the war zone will be redundant and we'll be leveling again, working towards the next war zone, and it's going to switch back and forth and back and forth. So we think, obviously a bit of speculation needed here, as they've not actually said what's going to happen to a war zone after a season ends. Who knows? But during this, let's call it leveling portion of the season system, I think there's some issues that I need to sort of get off of my chest and put out into the open. And the first of which is not having a visible goal. And the visible goal, I mean not actually being able to see the war zone. I really do think has detracted from a lot of player motivation to gear and level. Typically, what happens, and what I find works well within the game, is you try a challenge and you fail because it's got too hard. So you go away and you get some gear, and then you come back to that challenge and then you can do it. So then you keep moving, you find another challenge, oh god I died again, go back, get more gear and return. This doesn't have that current situation going on within the game. The game doesn't have that end game mechanism to actually put players to challenge. So that's sort of point number one for today. I think the current challenge of the leveling system is just not satisfactory. The fact that the current level cap sort of seems to finish at 1500 power level for both us and enemies, I think is not a healthy state. I think it should be at least 2000 for enemies in the highest sector and 1500 for us. I'd maybe add a few more planets that are unachievable so it doesn't trigger people, but I really feel like we need something that is really hard to do, because otherwise you're just doing easy content, mucking around with various builds to see what's the most OP. And I feel the lack of challenge is certainly something that's sort of driven me away from putting as many hours into the game as I could. And the lack of variance in terms of challenge. So take for example the cathedral mission, which is lovely, or would be if it didn't crash after a certain amount of time. It's a kind of cool concept. It's on its own, it's not enough to hold players for several weeks until the season comes. Let's be real here. That's not satisfactory, but I'd like to see more things like it. Maybe another point of interest in every single planet sector, so there's lots of those types of things to do, lots of different leaderboards, maybe some very highly set challenges that you can go back and do once you've hit max level, unlock some new patterns, cosmetics, I don't really care what, just something to do so that when you've hit max level you've got something challenging to keep you busy. And as well as that, I think gear farming is a bit of an issue for the game right now, because the moment you hit 40, which is the soft cap, you can start gearing for endgame, and you pop one of those items, it will give you a double relic chance, and you're kitted out within 10 tarot missions. If you're not kitted out with 10 tarot missions, because relics really feel like they're thrown at you at the end game, you can just ask your friends and they will post you some. And I'm not going to be the person, and I don't want to be the person, that says that the gifting system I think is bad for the game. Currently items are too easy to find. I hate to be the person to say this, but if I want a relic flamer, I just go in Micah Ball and I say, anyone got a spare relic flamer, someone gives it to me. Absolutely fine. But the problem is that's the best item in the game. Well, I'm not saying the flamer is the best, but you know what I mean. You can get access to the highest tier incredibly easily. And for me, that is a bit of a problem, because gearing's just too easy. I mean, the gearing process in this game isn't even exciting because you get so many relics thrown at you so fast. What I really think they could do with, and I don't want to just copy everything Diablo did, but something it did do well, was an item that isn't necessary, but for those that want to min-max is very useful, was implementing a Primal Ancient version of an existing item. So all they would need to do, very, very simple concept, is take a relic item, give it max available stats. So instead of having crit, I don't know, 5.5, it would always roll crit 7% or whatever the max is on that item. So every one of the stats would be maxed. The stats would still be random. It wouldn't be unique. It would just be a better version of a relic, and it could say super duper relic or something that's actually canon friendly. But that would give players that like farming items the ability to do so. But it would also mean that you don't actually have to get those items to be able to do stuff, because you're only talking about a few percent here and there. Yes, it would add up if you were fully primal, but it was a system that worked well in Diablo 3 at least, because it encouraged players to go out and get these items so they could get the super duper one that they wanted, or at the very least it just made you feel special every now and again when you got something that was really freaking good. Right now the quality of relics in my view is more like a yellow item in Diablo. It's just they're thrown at you all over the place. It's like, I've got too many relics. No, thank you. I just want that one. I don't want all of these. There's just way too many, and that's not. It would be okay if some of them were really, really bad, but the fact that you can re-roll the stats quite easily now, it's actually very easy to get the gear you want in the game. Maybe not to get every single stat that you want and min-max, but gearing for me is not in a particularly great place at the moment and needs a little bit of refinement. And for me, those are the major issues right now. The fact that we have an invisible endgame goal that we don't have access to right now, I feel is one of the major factors in driving players away, or rather just preventing them from realising why they're actually gearing up. I think that's a problem. After the first Warzone, you could maybe argue, well, you've seen with Warzone, you know what it includes now, so now when you're levelling up, you can look forward to the next one. But I don't really think that's satisfactory. I think there needs to be some content within the actual game, even within the levelling sector, and the Cathedral's not sufficient for this, but there needs to be some content that will keep players interested for a few weeks until the sort of events start and still stuff happens. Maybe the events are what are aimed to do this, but the problem is if an event's not running, what do you do in the middle of an event if you've already got full relic gear? It's just a lot of pauses right now that I think really go a long way to explain why the player base will probably peak whenever something is implemented for 2 weeks, just like it did in the alpha, just like it did in the beta, and then it's going to quickly plummet back down again. Obviously at the launch, this always happens with game launches. Some people buy a game, they realise they don't like it. Some people just play a game for the campaign, then they put it down. Player bases naturally sort of deteriorate over time for many games. Obviously it's nice when they slowly increase over time, but it's quite rare. But I think Martyr definitely needs some things in place for this levelling phase of the season to keep players interested for long enough, because I'll be honest with you, but the end game for Martyr right now doesn't involve gearing, because gear is thrown at you, and then it's just a case of trying different builds to stop yourself getting too bored of the gameplay. I mean, maybe rolling all 3 classes, but that's assuming you like them. So I can't say I'm surprised at all at anyone wanting to take a break from this. I fully support you taking a break. Obviously we've got an event starting today, so don't take a break for too long. Go get a sandwich or something, but you know, come back. We've got an event to do. But I do think this is something that needs sort of a little bit of looking into. How can we hook players into this game a little bit more? Obviously there's all of the other issues like getting skills working, actually making some of the abilities do what the tooltip says, making the combat a little bit more interesting, fixing what I think is the suppression disaster, and all of those other things. Oh, and making dot stacks so they're actually sort of worthwhile. There's all those other things to do, but for me there needs to be a hook which we can get our teeth sort of sunk into, and then it can drag us around for a few weeks while we wait for the Warzone, rather than sort of having to feel like I'm round a friend's house who's gone to the other room and I'm having to try and find ways to entertain myself. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd love to know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the game. Let me know what you think about the game state. And we'll talk soon. Take care, guys. All the best.